Welcome back to Zero Gravity Live, the weightless weekly tech talk podcast, bringing all the latest discussions right to you. We're sponsored by Object First, making the best storage for Veeam. Thanks as always for letting us put this on. And if you, the audience, are watching this from YouTube, make sure to ring that bell. Stay in tune with all things Zero Gravity and Object First. And if you're listening to the podcast, please leave us a nice review. If you're watching live, leave us a comment on whatever your platform you're tuning in from, letting us know where you're watching from. And I don't mean like I'm watching on Google Chrome on YouTube. It's like, I want to know, where are you? I'm in Florida. Sterling, where are you right now?
I am in beautiful Baltimore, Maryland, and we finally have a couple of days of sun, so it's doing great here. What about you guys?
Kennesaw, Georgia, baby. So it's super wet, rainy, and just coming off the really cool eclipse yesterday with my cool sunglasses that I was able to see it with.
Tell me you didn't wear those, Matt, please.
No, I didn't wear those. I actually have a full pair of certified eclipse watching glasses that are now collector's items until 2040 or 44 or something like that.
Nice. Yeah, 2044 I think is the next one that passes over here. Yeah.
I'm just going to make a prediction that I'm not going to make it. So. Hey, where does one get certified eclipse sunglasses? Like, how do I procure me a pair of those?
I don't know. They're everywhere. All the kids had them, and we had a big neighborhood watch party, down by the pond. And it's funny because now you see them on Facebook Marketplace that, hey, these are collector's items. They're going for $5 a pop, and you could use them again in 20 years or whatever.
Fantastic.
If I see those out at the local pub, I know they've made it. I know they've made it.
Well, and another funny thing I saw, NASA actually, and I was commenting internally about this earlier, NASA actually put out a warning yesterday to not point your cell phone cameras at the eclipse, or else it might damage the internal cameras. And I'm just kind of thinking, well, duh. You're not able to stare at it with your eyes. I can't imagine it's good for electronics either. But I was able to use the iPhone looking through the actual lens from the glasses and get a decent little pic of I think we were about 80, 85, maybe 88% here in Georgia. So we didn't get full totality, but it was still really cool to see.
We hardly had any here. I didn't even bother looking at it, getting glasses. Florida, we get ocean and Disney. We don't get eclipses here.
I would say that's a good consolation prize. Here we had a beautiful sunny day. Getting ready for the eclipse. We weren't in the total path, but getting ready for the eclipse, a ton of clouds moved in, and that's all we looked at for the next 25 minutes. So I was one of those people in swath of total cloudness.
Nice. What a way to spend the eclipse.
Yeah. Totality of the wrong kind.
Yeah, seriously.
Total waste of time. Looking through the clouds. So, hey, I don't know if y'all have anything you want to share inside your office, but I did bring a thing this week that I wanted to show.
You want to kick it off?
I think you're going to love this.
Let's do it.
So I forget the name, so this is going to be bad. This is like bad. Look for this object. This object is great. It looks like, as you can see, a bunch of volume knobs, and on the back is a USB-C. And what this does is you plug it into your Windows computer, and you can assign each of these to different sound devices in your computer. Ooh. So if you want to have like your Discord audio on one, your browser on another, the game you're playing, you can tweak them all individually and not have to like go into sound properties and deal with the nonsense that is Windows Sound Manager. Set your mic volume on here. There are also button presses so you can toggle between things. I don't know what it's called. So like, bad on me. It was a gift from my brother, and he said, you're never gonna, complain about your Windows sound problems again. And it's true. This does fix all the issues. So highly recommend if you struggle in the world of Windows gaming the way I do. I can't live without it now.
Honestly, that's pretty awesome. Is that USB? I'm going to assume that's USB.
Yeah.
USB-A.
It's Type C. Yep.
Oh, it's Type C. Oh, I love it.
There's no branding on it, which, is probably my key complaint because I can't tell you what it is.
Yeah.
Bad on them. Put the product name on it. It's probably some secret spyware device that we'll talk about later that's infiltrating my home. But man, does it make my life easier. I love this thing. So good. It's also got RGB. So if you want color,
really,
it can do the rainbow and wave on by.
See, I actually really love that. I'm not a huge gamer, but I have several mics in the office and we go back and forth. And sometimes I'm standing, sometimes I'm sitting, sometimes I'm using a different headset. And that would actually be nice to just sort of, dial each and every one in. I know Matt has some stuff like that that plays the sounds and things like that. I need to get my hands
Oh yeah.
on those, but that's pretty slick.
Yeah, so it looks a lot like the Stream Deck. It looks like a very basic version of the Stream
Hmm.
Deck, and what's interesting is, like, let me throw up this visual for you guys. So this is the Stream Deck, what is it? Stream Deck Plus. So I
Mhm.
actually have one of these on my desk as well, and it has the same dials that you're talking about, Anthony, that you can assign to different volumes, different inputs. They click in, to your point, so you can set that action to do something. But then you also have those programmable digital buttons above where you can set all kinds of crazy shortcuts. So it sounds like a similar device. And I wasn't really planning on talking about my Stream Deck, but I totally agree with you. The Stream Deck is amazing for just quick action things that you do. Like, I've got mine toggled into a lot of OBS scenes where I can turn off my green screen, on and off like that. So
I
it's like
like
you
That's
don't have to
cool.
go dig into a filter to enable it. So really, really cool stuff. I can change the lighting, as you can see. So
Whoa.
it's really cool. So I totally agree with you. It definitely is a time saver.
Can we get one of those with like an OOTB button on there? So it's just like safe back. Like I could imagine like a little OOTB on one of those things. You just hit it and your backups are safe. It's like they all go to like the immutable backup. It's like the happy OOTB. Can we do that? I guess you can do anything on those, right?
You can change the images, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That's
Super
pretty
cool.
slick. We got to
Custom
do that.
Super
icons,
cool.
all kinds of good stuff.
We got to do that. We got to do that. That's pretty slick.
What about y'all? Did you bring anything fun this week?
So since I was out last week, let me give you guys a twofer. Let me toggle this back on. So get rid of this. We'll circle back to this topic in a minute. But last week or 2 weeks ago, yeah, I guess it was, and frankly, we've been
A
talking
while.
about home automation and smart home stuff for a while, right?
Yeah.
So I figure I'll share these two things. It's not something physically in my office I can hold up and show you guys, but I do actually have both of these devices either on the house or attached in some way to the house. So this is the Govee Outdoor Permanent Pro LED lights. So if you guys are like me and you've ever hung Christmas lights, I've done it like once up on the ladder. I never wanted to do it again, but my kids and my wife, they love the lights and the festive stuff. So I totally get it. So I actually called last season and got a quote on how much it would be for someone to come out, install lights. Now, this is seasonal, mind you. They would install them, they'd be nice and glorious. They'd do all the, legwork. Then they would come take them down, after the Christmas holiday had passed. Do you guys know that that was not 1,000, but multi-$1,000 to have that
Seriously?
stuff done? And I'm like, you guys are crazy. So
Wow.
I discovered this, and this is a product by Govee. So these are basically outdoor lights that can be installed and they stay up permanently, and they're designed to blend in with the aesthetic. So they make them in white or black, depending on, what primary color your external house is. And what's really cool about this is once you get them installed, they're there for, the year long. So you can do cool stuff for all the different holidays, for Valentine's Day, for, football games, July 4th, and all those types of things. And I mean, my kids love this stuff. So it's like, buy once, cry once. I think these were like $600. And, I had to have one of my contractors came out and he had to rent a boom, one of those little lifts to get
Hmm.
up to the eaves.
Hmm.
But again, you do it once and you're done. It makes splicing easy. You can cut them. So that's number one. And let me hit number two, and then we can have a discussion around all this stuff. Number two, I think, is when you think about smart home and
What?
automation, this thing right here probably could save you the most amount of money in the event that you needed home automation to come in the clutch, let's say. So what this is it's a smart robot valve control
I like it.
for your water main. So basically you would install this on the main line that comes into your entire home, and you can see that, like, if I go through a couple of these pictures, They've even engineered it to where you can install it safely. So, like right here, as an example, you wouldn't want to clamp something like that to a copper pipe, but this design lets you clamp it onto the junction. So it's a lot more rigid and it's got a lot more torque. So you can open and close that valve.
Hmm.
Then in the whole smart home ecosystem, you can have water leak sensors placed all throughout the house, in the basement, under the washing machine, under the sink, maybe behind a toilet. And these things are all, battery operated. So they don't need an outlet. They just need a good Wi-Fi signal. So for me, literally our neighbor, they were out of the country and had a water main leak in their basement where literally it was leaking into the basement. Luckily, the house sitter ran over and needed help, so we were able to shut off the water main. But that caused him like $10,000 worth of damage because it
Holy
was
crap.
about 6 inches deep
Yeah.
in the entire basement.
Yeah.
And it's like I look at all the cool modern stuff that we've got, and I know in the past we've talked about like blinds, like I've got home automation blinds. That's cool. That's not going to save anybody any money.
Yeah.
This one right here, though, if you were out of town and you had a water leak, I mean, this could be a game changer. So I kind of look at it from a smart device that you would want to invest in if you do have the whole smart home. This one, when I saw this, it was almost an immediate buy. I was like, that is smart right there. So what's y'all's take on these two things?
I'm glad we're here. We've talked about this before. I was an early adopter, where you had to choose the Z Wave or the Big B and the Zigbee and those others.
Yep.
I have had a vacation home that was down Eastern Shore it's near the water
Yep.
in Maryland. There are concerns of flooding. There are concerns of issues where rain can even get into the house at some points. And I watched this space probably 10 to 15 years ago. Back then, it was basically just a bunch of sensors,
Yep.
that could tell you whether something was leaking, but there was still no way to turn it off.
Yep.
Recently, I have seen this leveraged, and of course, we've seen it leveraged in other ways of smart home things. And we talked a little bit about last week when I talked about plugging in, or a couple of weeks ago, plugging in certain plugs to make your dumb things smart. They also have a version of these that are little pokers that will turn buttons on and off in your smart home. So this is a great way to make sort of these not smart devices smart. And it's just great to see that they're actually starting to design them not to be sort of just a tack on, but they're really rethinking about what it would take. I think that this is a win-win. As a matter of fact, here in Baltimore, I split my time here between here and San Diego. Here in Baltimore, over Christmas, I had a pinhole leak in one of the expansion tanks. Luckily, I was home. It was Christmas morning. I woke up and saw that little pinhole leak. Had I been for weeks on the West Coast, that would have certainly caused a ton of damage. So, to anybody here listening, thinking of ways to keep your home secure and ways to sort of simplify doing that, this is a huge win. Huge win. What do you think, Anthony?
Whew. I mean, I'm just grateful I haven't had this issue yet, because now I'm nervous. I think that's every time we have one of these, I get nervous about something new. I didn't realize the water main situation was so deadly. As a homeowner, I've had my share of leaks through the roof and ceiling, which has been fun. And that's a Florida issue. I'll give you that. But I've never thought about this before. I do have easy access to my main. I know how to shut it off very easy, but not being here and being able to just hit a button and flip it off, that's a game changer. I see no reason not to. I mean, the only risk is obviously, you don't change the batteries often enough, and I'm sure it notifies you when it's getting low.
Yeah.
I have a battery powered lock on my door. So I've never been locked out of my house. I've had that for a decade now.
Yeah.
So I think this is perfect. This is no complaints. Awesome.
Agreed.
Well, and the good thing with this is the actual valve control that I'm showing is not battery operated. It actually goes into an outlet. So it always has power, assuming the house has power.
I dig that. Yeah.
The sensors are what are battery powered. So you can place them anywhere and not be tied to an outlet. And to your point, Anthony, this little device here is not going to do anything to solve a flood. Like if it was due to water, or to your point, Sterling, if it was water coming in from the outside, I mean, who cares if the water main's on or off, if it's exterior water,
Right.
But those leak sensors would alert you that, hey, you've got water in your basement.
Absolutely.
This thing's been turned off and I still detect water. You might want to call somebody. So it's all
That's
about
really
timing.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Matt, this was a good one today, dude. This one knocked out the park. I mean, this is really practical. Okay, fine. I wouldn't call it cheap, but think about the thousands and thousands and
Yeah.
thousands in damages
Yeah.
if you don't catch something like this. And this will let you know right away. Love it.
Completely relative, right? You're right. I mean, $215 is, I would say, mega cheap compared to any type of water damage that might occur in a basement.
Yeah.
I almost see this as something, I'm sure we'll talk about this, not today, then someday, as an insurance adjuster opportunity, right? To underwrite. You'd think insurance companies would really be into things like this, because for the price here, you could end up saving a lot of money, not just in your expenses to fix the thing that is destroyed by water, but from an insurance perspective as well. You'd think it'd lower your premiums.
Wow.
I need to call and try to negotiate something on that.
You need to do that.
I haven't explored that angle yet, but you've got a point.
I feel like Anthony is saying that this Bulldog Wi-Fi plumbing thing is the UTB, immutable data of the plumbing world. I mean, honestly, right? We've seen, certainly in our industry, insurance rates are going up. There are checks and balances that companies have to make sure they have multiple sets of their data, make sure one set is on immutable backup, make sure these are the types of things that will drive down a lot of those premiums. And so same kind of concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And to your point, Sterling, they've got Wi-Fi versions and they have Zigbee versions, so you can take your pick.
Great. So the old people that won't get off the old stuff, they can still plug it in. Come on, guys.
I love it. Well, I know we've now spent almost 20 minutes talking about cool gadgets and gizmos. So I'm curious, what is going on in the world this week? What have y'all brought to share with us? Sterling, let's start with you.
All right, I will go ahead and kick it off. And today I'd like to share something about how AI may be being leveraged to help us out with noisy neighbors.
What?
Yeah, you heard it here. You heard it here. We have today a gentleman that has created something called Reggaeton Be Gone. We've all had those noisy neighbors, whether they're next door or whether you're in an apartment or in a condo. I remember one time I had an older gentleman that would love to blast Frank Sinatra after 10:30 at night. No idea. Maybe he just couldn't hear. He had it turned up. All I know is it was right next to my bedroom and I couldn't sleep some of those times. Well, this gentleman right here has undergone some of the same things. He found that one of his neighbors at certain times of night loved to play reggaeton, and it would come on and be loud for hours and hours. So what did this guy do? He wrote an AI model that actually can distinguish reggaeton versus other types of music with 75% accuracy, if not above. The model is always learning. He then took this model. Oh, it gets better. He then took this model, paired it up with a Raspberry Pi. You guys are welcome very much, because Raspberry Pis are the answer to the world. Hooked it up with a Raspberry Pi, a very small LED screen, and a microphone, and wrote a Python app that will actually listen to this. And here's where it gets interesting. When he finds, or when it does with this accuracy, what this actual music is, it then essentially sends what is a denial of service attack to this gentleman's Bluetooth, the neighbor's Bluetooth speaker, to stop it from playing the reggaeton. So I just want to recap to everyone who's listening. You have your noisy neighbor. There is a particular way for me, I could have identified Frank Sinatra, identified that with over 80% accuracy, and then send this poor man a denial of service attack with his Bluetooth to disallow him from listening to Frank Sinatra. So AI being used to quiet, the noisy neighbors. What do you guys think?
This is wild. Firstly, I mean, there's legal and ethical questions that I'm sure we could dig into here. There's also, this just begs the question: have you not considered talking to your neighbor before you go and build, a super death box? Maybe just ask them kindly.
Can you turn it down?
I'm sure he did, but it is always funny that we go to these extreme lengths to build these complex solutions to what seems to be a pretty simple problem. Man's obviously wicked smart. So I,
Indeed.
I just, I mean, just so much to digest here.
I think you're
Matt, what are
spot
you
on.
thinking right now?
Yeah, that's hilarious. Um, I would love to be able to do that for dogs that bark, and I know there are some devices that do that, but, you know, without hurting the dog's ears, that would be
Mhm.
my use for it, but I think it's funny that somebody would actually sit down, to your point, Anthony, and, like, create such a thing, like, in the shadows rather than just going out and be like, "Yo, it's 11 o'clock. I don't need to hear Sinatra."
I could not agree more. I mean, once again, this just goes to show you what we can do with AI, right? And
Yeah,
how it's gonna and how it's helping. You know, we're already using some of the machine learning and some of the AI really in our industry to kind of help us find new malware threats or look at certain IOPS and the way they behave to kind of detect these certain things. Clearly, this dude is very talented. Clearly, he's missing a little something in communication. So
Just a little bit.
just
Well,
a little bit.
and I think that's the question, right? Is like, is AI making us more or less human? And what I
Mm,
mean by that is when we've unlocked all these capabilities and all these superpowers that are essentially, just technology driven, are we losing the ability to do the things that we've been able to do for millennia, right? Talk to people, understand, hey, your music's a little loud. After 10 o'clock, can we just turn it down to a volume? Let's do a test. I've done this with my neighbors. I'm like, can we do a test? I want to see how loud because I live in a townhome. I have
yeah.
a home attached to unfortunately, my living room wall. And I said, hey, can you let me know if you hear my audio? We crank it up. We find what the decibel limit is. It's like, okay, cool. We've established a baseline, and now we won't go past this. It's
Right.
respect and
Right.
communication and kindness. But I think AI, and we're going to talk about this every week for the rest of the
I
show
know.
for as long
I
as we
know.
live.
Yeah.
AI is great. It's awesome. It's cool. It does so much more than we even have begun to fathom. But what it takes away is our ability to think independently and to behave and act in a way that is human. And that worries me greatly.
Yeah.
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 You're such a good
You're
human,
absolutely
Anthony, thinking that, you could just have a rational conversation with your neighbor about
right.
decibel levels.
And I'm an intro. I don't like going and talking to people. I'd rather just on a conversation. I have to communicate. But even me in my introverted way is thinking, I'd much rather just go elaborate and figure this out mano a mano versus let's send a denial of service over Bluetooth.
I mean, really, it just seems a bit extreme for what the
A
guy
little
really
bit.
was trying to do here.
Yeah,
So
just a
yeah,
little bit.
yeah. And hey, anybody listening would love to hear. Is this something you would do? Would you go and talk to your neighbor, or would you just send them a denial of service attack and stop that Mariah Carey Christmas song from screaming at the top of the lungs for 3 weeks straight? Let us know what you
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, if this is something that you would do, please put your name and zip code in the comment just for my personal awareness. I need to know where not to move.
Anthony needs to know where to ship his Raspberry Pi to. Oh, that's great. That's
I
great.
dig it. Matt, what do you have for us this
Well,
week?
so speaking of interesting technology and ways to use it. So first, I have to preface this with I know nothing really about physics, right? But I was coming across this. And archaeology, I've always found super interesting, like studying the past and specifically like undersea things and all this type of stuff that you can't see, just with the naked eye. So we've got the James Webb telescope looking out, but what's looking down and on our own planet. One of the things I thought was super cool is apparently they have created a way using physics where they can actually do a down scanning sonar that's looking for muons. If any of you guys know what that is, I
No.
didn't. But essentially, check this out. So this was in Italy,
Whoa.
and they're using this device to scan straight down into the earth. And they
Wow.
can actually build these 3D models of exactly what is below, like the substrate. And they're using this now on the pyramids and all this other type of stuff. And I'm like, we are so close I would say in the next 5 or 10 years to completely seeing the bottom of the oceans without any issues, and all the stuff that's been buried through time, to have a nice rendering of it. And to me, I saw this and I was like, this is next level. And they're talking about being able to use this for all kinds of other potential use cases. Like it's talking about, cancer research and being able to
Mhm.
get better intel in the body rather than just an x-ray or an MRI. So this is like another way to do it. To me, I've always found that technology intriguing, like what is it, the Drain the Ocean show that, comes on
Hmm.
some of these channels. What do you guys think about this type of technology, using it for, not only this, but other potential, maybe medical use
This
cases?
is amazing. Is this a modeling tool, or is this something where we just essentially shown a flashlight and we can now see what they're seeing? I mean, will it take time to map, or is this just something where we can point at it sort of like a sonar and see what it is? Do you happen to have that
Yeah,
information?
I was reading the article and it said the device is about the size of a typical microwave,
Okay.
and you just set it in there and it does whatever it does downward,
Mm,
and sideways or whatever,
mm,
and builds this topography. It makes me think of fishing because, I've definitely been on some of these fancy fishing boats with the down and side scanning
yeah.
sonar where you can kind of see a similar idea,
Yeah.
but that's in water, right? Anything's easy to bounce through water, but like for this to actually go into the earth
Yeah.
and create, and more importantly, differentiate, like what's a tunnel, what's a cavern, what's a structure versus just dirt.
Yeah.
Like how on earth it can do that, I think is just amazing.
Think about how this could be applied to, even some legal efforts, drug smugglers underneath the ground that are crossing borders all over the world, being able to kind of look and see some of those things. I could see that being very interesting technology there.
Yeah.
Yeah, if there's been an earthquake, you
Yeah.
want to look for people under the rubble. If it's able
Wow.
to kind of
Holy cow.
differentiate those kind
Yes.
of shapes,
Yep.
I mean, this is super cool
Yeah.
stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, if
Yeah.
you're listening to the podcast, obviously you can't see what's on
Uh,
the screen right now, but look up these images because it's amazing. Like
yeah.
I used to do a little bit of 3D scanning. I took a Xbox Connect and I hooked it up to my computer and I would like go around my room waving the wand and creating 3D models of things that I had. And it was
Nice.
so primitive and rough, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that was like a 3D scanning technology. We're not penetrating and looking through things. We're just looking at objects and trying to create 3D models of it.
Yeah.
And to see like almost a decade later where we've come
Yeah.
with this 3D modeling of a slice of the earth, this hidden burial chamber that's in Naples, Italy.
Yeah.
Wow. That is
And
some impressive technology.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
and
we're like one step away from a mini meter. I'm talking
Yeah.
about you can go up to somebody and you can poke them with this thing and be like, I can see inside of you. You're a meanie. I'm not going to deal with you. It's the meanie meter,
Meanie
man.
meter.
Yeah, that's what this is going to do. You're going to be able to
That's
tell.
clearly where this is going, Sterling. I'm glad
Oh
you got the prophecy to see it.
He's gonna have the AR goggles, right? The glasses. They'll be like, nope, dodge this guy. He's a meanie.
He's a meanie, and you know it.
One of the things I was thinking about too, when you kind of put this in context of our space with data, like imagine how much data this stuff is generating,
Yeah.
like when it's building these models. And then if you try to do any type of stitching, like let's say you wanted to do this for the town,
Mm.
think about how many different places you'd have to go so that you could create like a stitched full scale image of what's
Yeah.
below the earth. And
Yeah.
to me, the use cases, and that's just non-medical, right? I mean, certainly medical, it would almost be more important, if it's got the ability to save lives and save people from cancer.
Yeah.
Obviously I'm all for it,
Yeah.
use it
Mhm.
for any way possible to do that. And if it gives you more accurate representations of what's going on, again, I think the technology is exciting on where it's going.
I think this is great. I mean, if you even think about this, looking at to be able to look in data sets. I know this is sort of a different way to think about it. Heat maps of data, where data has grown. Now that more and more we're starting to use data lakes and things like that to be able to look and see what data you can even leverage the metadata of it. I think that's gonna be great. Another slam dunk, man. Well done.
Yeah. Super interesting stuff. As we get into our last topic here, I do have to bring up that this is the month of security. So we're at Object First focused on talking about and doing education around security as a whole, not just for your backup data, but for your life, for your personal, how you behave on the internet. We're trying to create awareness for just good data and personal security. And this topic is going to upset some people. So
Oh boy. Here
get ready. U.S. Health Department warns hospital of hackers targeting IT help desk. So this came from Bleeping Computer. I'm actually going to read a little bit of the article because I think it lends a lot of credibility to what's going on. And it also help you understand exactly what's happening. So basically, they kind of set up what's going on. The Department of Health and Human Services are basically being warned, and they're now warning others about these types of attacks that happen. And the attacks, threat actors use local area codes to call organizations pretending to be employees in the financial department and provide stolen ID verification details, including corporate ID and social security numbers. Using the sensitive information and claiming their smartphone is broken, they convince IT help desk to enroll a new device in MFA under the attacker's control. This gives them access to corporate resources, allows them to redirect bank transactions and business email compromise attacks. So super simple tactics here, right? Just get a little bit of data, manipulate that data, pretend to be the person, use that data to validate your identity. And then with the new validation, you can now just whiz through any secure part of the organization. We talk a lot about zero trust on this show. And the idea of zero trust is always verify, assume breach and always verify. And clearly with this kind of information, it brings into question some of the verification techniques. And if we need more, it's a very scary time to be in technology or to even use technology in a business sense, because when you realize how easy it is to be compromised like this, it calls into question everything, right?
Yeah.
The last thing I'll point out in this article is they talk about how they think what is happening right now. It shares the same similarity to Scattered Spider, who were the organization that hacked MGM Resorts last year, and have gone after many other large organizations as well. So these folks aren't stopping. They're getting more clever and they're becoming more successful. And I thought we could have a little bit of a conversation around one, what happens next, and two, what do we do to help with it?
Yeah.
I think. Go ahead, Sterling.
I was just going to say this really feels like, to Anthony's point, this is going to kick off the next generation. Like, it's MFA today. I feel like if we go back a whole bunch of years, this was the new complicated password. Hey, put an exclamation point in there, put some dollar signs and some ampersands. Nobody will ever guess it. And then there were just programs that learned to chew through it. We're going to do the same thing, with MFA. We're going to have to move to that next level. But man, if there's one thing, going to sound like a broken record here, but man, if I think about this, the one common denominator I always hear is it's the human factor, right, Matt? I mean, it's the fact that they always go for the weakest link, which unfortunately is us, because we communicate with each other.
Yeah, I was about to say social engineering is the biggest problem. Like, your example, Anthony, I was literally just talking to some old work colleagues in a Skype chat yesterday, and they brought up one of the new attacks is jury duty, that people will get phone calls and it's someone who speaks, let's say, perfect English, for where we're at here in the Southeast. They sound 100% legitimate and they call people saying, you missed your jury duty and now there's a warrant out for your arrest. In order to rectify it, you need to pay us, $1,000, $2,000 or $3,000, whatever dollars. But that's a thing. Like, if you just don't show up for jury duty, that can lead to some legal consequences. So on the surface, something like that resonates different than if you get some, email where it's broken English from a @Gmail account or whatever. Like, those types of attacks are getting more common and they're getting more believable to your point, Sterling, the average human. So it's like, what do we do as a society? Because you can only put so many checks and balances in before you're right. There's a weakest link. Somebody's going to fail. Somebody's going to essentially let them through whatever type of defenses you've set up unknowingly and, involuntarily. So it's like, what do you do at this point? Like, how do you get society and get humans to be better at assuming it's a breach, assuming it's a bad actor, always, right? Without just sounding completely paranoid all the time.
Yeah. Well, in zero trust, when CISA started working on zero trust, they put up the idea of policy enforcement points and policy detection points. So in technology, or in the tech industry, if you have services and apps that are all communicating with each other, the more policy enforcement points you have, basically a point that says, "Hey, service, are you who you say you are, or are you a virus?" And then we go look at the policy detection and say, "Oh, yeah, they are. They have the credentials. They've been verified." We come back and we let them through, and then they get stopped at the next point along the way. You're basically just creating, like metal detector walkthroughs or TSA checkpoints inside your infrastructure. But this completely breaks down when the human is compromised. Exactly like you're saying, Matt. Like, I don't know how we fix this. I mean, I know, at Object First with OOPI, our box is zero access. And what that means is we limit any access or any administrative capabilities or privilege entirely. So an Object First OOPI user cannot factory reset the box. They can't delete data once it's been written to an immutable store. They have no administrative privilege that might come with other storage vendors. That's a unique thing for us, but you can't always do that. One, administrators do need to administrate in some cases. It makes sense for a backup storage box, but not for every storage box. So how do you, without locking out privilege entirely, like how do we fix the human part of this problem? I'm just curious to hear what y'all think.
I would love to hear what some of the listeners think as well. Man, I got to tell you, I don't think there's any solving this. It's just the next way of looking at it. To your point, we just talked about Object First and OOPI. That is purpose built not to give people access. So now we're looking at architectures where you have to be able to do your job, but you have to set up some fail safes for the inevitable. At the end of the day, I started off as a Windows domain admin. At the end of the day, I was there to help my clients share information. Today, we are still here to help people share information. If you take away all of that, we quite simply can't do business. And so it's really a new world to think about, how do you do that and how do you keep it safe? I just think we're going to go into more and more purpose-built stuff so that you have the flexibility where you need it, but you have the security that you need when you need it, period. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think, going back to the whole zero trust, methodology with segmentation, that's why that's so critical. It's like, if you segment the human out from the other parts that they would otherwise administer, that's one additional resiliency zone, the human, right? So it's like you think about the backup storage, the backup software, the network, all these different things. Well, you do have this common denominator of an admin who, has the ability to make mistakes, right? Sometimes they do stuff unintentionally with no malicious intent, just make a mistake, make an error that could cost, data loss. And that's why separating all this stuff out, that's why, to your point, Sterling, it's like, look, we're not trying to take away the keys. We're trying to make sure that if you had the keys, you're not going to go to the wrong car or you're not going to drop them down a sewer drain. It's like, we want to make sure everything is held intact, secure, safeguarded from, an unnecessary or unintentional, mistake.
And let's make sure we segment the human, not just segment human, because then you're like a horror villain,
No,
like,
we don't mean that.
Don't need that image.
Oh, Lord.
I really like that point, Matt. It's interesting. If we treat ourselves as services, right? Like, applications are complex things, especially business facing applications. There are so many individual microservices and services and other apps that comprise the service that is delivered to the end user. But if we treat ourselves as part of that service and we make validation of ourselves part of the process, and it's not just MFA or type in your password that you use everywhere. We do a little biometric scanning. Like maybe we all need a biometric device attached to our work computer at all times. I am who I say I am. I put my little fingerprint right here. Yeah. Sure, even those things can be compromised, but every level we add of checks and segmentation of the individual interacting with the technology, that creates a better security net and minimizes that attack surface even further. So if I am compromised from a 2FA perspective, well, they can only get so far, because in order to get access to the production database, that requires a fingerprint scan or a retinal scan or something else. And I think we're quickly approaching that. Obviously, if your technology is doing that, you might start investing in that kind of investment for the future. But I think it's the only way we get around this.
Yeah, straight Mission Impossible style, right? Where you got to do the full face mask and all the stuff to get through all the different levels.
That's
You know, I totally agree. And, I think Veeam is on the right track too, by the way. They just implemented the 4 eyes security for a lot of things, that can be accomplished in Veeam. And it's not about password compromises or even identity, compromises. It's, hey, admin 1, do you agree with what admin 2 is about to do? So 2 people in the company have to say, yes, this is what we want to do. And like for me, that's going to be a better safeguard than, MFA. Is it the fingerprint scanner? And you're right. I mean, a fingerprint scanner is going to be a lot more difficult to break. Retinal scanner, all the crazy biometrics that we can do. But if somebody were to compromise that human, well, then they've got access. Or what if that human is the compromise?
Yeah.
They can bypass all that stuff, right? And just give full reign to the kingdom. And that's where the 4 eyes really comes into play. It's like, you could have 2 bad actors that are going at it together. But again, the chances of that are exponentially lower than just one bad actor.
It's I love one of my favorite 80s movies is War Games with Matthew Broderick. And that first scene of that movie is when they're in the nuclear silo and the 2 people at the opposite ends of the room have to turn their key at the same time. One of them thinks something's off and he doesn't turn the key because something is off. Like that second human validation. And I think, we talked about the Chinese bank heist that happened a few months ago on a previous episode, where the individual was talking to his CEO and CFO on webcam, and they were imposters, not actually the people they claimed to be, and they netted millions of dollars. Just having a 4 eyes verification in that case, or even multiple, like let's go 8 eyes, right? For $1 million transfers, let's get sign off on 4 different people. This way, you have to have full, complete agreement that yes, the CFO, the CRO, the CEO, and the CTO all say yes, we agree, and let's make sure they're all verified before we do the thing too. It's a little extra work for a lot of extra protection, because I'm sure they'd rather keep their $10 million than to lose it, because it was frustrating to have to scan my fingerprint.
Spot on.
Agreed.
Well, great conversation, gentlemen. I want to bring up one more thing before we bounce. If you found the conversation around zero trust interesting, and you happen to exist in the world of backup and recovery, do scan this QR code and give it a read. It's the Zero Trust Data Resilience white paper written by us here at Object First. Which will link you to a Zero Trust research paper, which gets really deep into the weeds on why you need more than just Zero Trust data principles for backup. You need Zero Trust data resilience. This is a great way to get into that world and kind of understand that better. And it doesn't require you to buy more stuff. I mean, it might, but the principles in general are sound and solid, so that just learning these things can help augment your security posture, increase some of those practices, and have a better secure environment. Highly recommend giving a scan, getting a read. It's free. What damage can be done by doing that? Any closing thoughts, gentlemen, before we end it this week?
I really love the chats this week. I mean, I just gotta say, Matt, you were out for a week, buddy. You brought the heat. You had some great conversational topics today. I really do love the fact that you were able to kind of point out and teach some people about ways to kind of let technology work for you. I mean, turning off your water in the middle of an event, a flooding event, a lot better way to deal with life rather than sending a denial of attacks to somebody's Bluetooth speaker. But well done, my friend.
And for my next trick, we'll have to figure some other stuff out. I got a cool one for next week, sneak peek. But no, I think for today, closing thoughts, I agree. A lot of great stuff talked about, and I think when we look at technology, there's good ways to harness and leverage technology. There's some creative ways, some iffy ways. And I think for better or for worse, we're going in the right direction. Like we're really trying to use technology to solve, real world problems. I love the idea of physicists, joining with, say, the medical world and figuring out a better way to look at potential cancer. Like that's huge, right? And that's like, physicists aren't necessarily in the medical field, but when you cross collaborate, it's going to be for the better good. And, from a historical perspective, that's something that's super interesting to me. And you look at all the different ways that technology is advancing rapidly. We talked about AI, tons of times on this show, and it's going to keep accelerating with different ways that it's adopted. And I think back to the final point and the key message we're trying to drill home with security is like, look, trust but verify. We
Yeah.
can't all walk around in a cave and act paranoid all the time, but we have to know that social engineering is getting exponentially more advanced. Like to your point, Anthony, like if somebody could literally have a FaceTime video with you and you be duped into that being not the person that you're looking at, I I worry about what's next, right? So that's like insane level of advanced, phishing and scamming and social engineering and all the things. So it's the 4 eyes, the 8 eyes, to your point. I truly feel like that is one of the best steps forward we can implement, not only as a company, but as, your own internal security best practices. You don't need technology for that per se. It's like, look, we're about to go make this decision. Let's chat about it before we go make that action, right? Now, granted, we will need some security mechanisms to make sure one user can't do it, which is what Veeam has, innovated with the 4 eyes. But I think conversation, let's make sure that we all agree this is the right move. I think, that's something that we should all adopt a bit more. And, I think to your point, Anthony, earlier, we talked about it. All this technology is making us less human and we lose the ability to have conversations and just socialize and talk. So maybe we can pull a straw out of that old hat and just have more conversations.
I love this.
That was going to be my point, Matt, is, if someone calls you and says they're your son and they say, hey, I need $1,000 because I've been kidnapped, say, okay, let me just call you back real quick. I want to make sure I have the right number, right? Like
Yeah.
It's so easy for us to be open and be honest and tell each other, hey, I'm a little skeptical, so I'm just going to do the extra verification. I trust you and I want to help, but let's make sure, right? And I think we've lost some of that. We don't explain ourselves clearly anymore. We don't think about the connections and the consequences of the causes that we're involved with. And exactly to your point, if we're a little more human, in the olden days, we'd ask more questions. We'd verify before we jump right in. We're so instantaneous now because text messaging, online banking. I can trade crypto in a second and watch my money grow. Everything happens now.
Yeah.
We never sit and think for a minute, like, is this legit? Am I talking to my son? Or am I having a conversation with a person at my bank? Or is this some kind of imposter? If we just take that beat, ask ourselves the question, like, hey, I'm going to have a human interaction with this person. I'm going to try and suss out what's actually going on here. That can lead to just general improvements all around for society. Like, let's love technology, but let's also embrace the fact that humans are what's controlling it on the back end. And we still need to be human to have those interactions.
Yeah, we're at the core. We are
Yep.
at the core.
Amen.
And with that, thank you as always, Sterling and Matt, bringing the heat this week. Whew, I got to crank up the AC in Florida. It's so hot in here. Thank you for bringing the topics. Thank you to our audience for bringing the chat. Great conversations today all around. And, thanks to Object First for letting us put this on every week and talk about some cool technology as well as OOPI, best storage for Veeam. So thank you to our sponsor as always. And for everyone else, stay weightless, stay frictionless, and stay zero gravity. We'll see y'all next week.
See you.